Okay, now, good morning. Oh no, it's not morning anymore, it's afternoon. So, welcome everyone. Good afternoon. Um, Maybe before we begin, please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Adiba, and I'm a lecturer in Department of Architecture in Faculty of Architecture and Design in UPN Veteran Jawa Timur, Surabaya. Now, as you all know, today we're going to we have this wonderful event today, and this is a guest lecture, international guest lecture, and we're very proudly present you this event because we have such a wonderful keynote speaker that will present us about stone and architecture. So this topic is highly fascinating, especially for myself, because architecture has such great history with architecture. With stone has great history with architecture because in some cases, in some perspective, so stone is like the beginning of architecture, and it's somewhat built from the stone, and it shapes how architecture is currently built right now. So now, today, in this wonderful lecture, we're going to talk about stone and how it is how stone has created architecture, current architecture, and how it's somewhat going to shape architecture as well in the future. And for that topic, we have invited a wonderful speaker directly from Jordan, and now it is 35 in the afternoon, and I think in Jordan it's now around 8:30, 35, and with this time difference, I think it's not gonna stop us from having this lecture, because our lecturer is currently in Jordan, and his name is Bashar Abitar. He is an architect and landscape architect and EI engineer with vast experience in design and construction. He is currently in Jordan, and he is a recognized architect and guitar consultant. Now, he has such great experience in architectural design, landscape design, design developments, and several follow-ups for several projects, including touristic projects like office buildings, banks, and residence. And he also has a great practice in renovation projects, landscaping, and international projects. He's going to present us a topic, that's stone and architecture topic. And the presentation will probably last for about 45 to 60 minutes. And then we'll continue with discussions. And so I wish that all the participants can prepare their questions, and you can ask questions by raising your hands, and I'll choose you if you wanted to deliver your questions directly, or you can type your question in the chat in this, what do we call this, in the chat place, the chatting place. Okay, now without further ado, I will please welcome Mr. Bashar to present his presentation.
Thank you so much, Bu Adiba, and I would thank all our attendees for their time and effort to attend this lecture. I hope it will be of benefit to all of you. And I would thank UPN Veteran at Surabaya, Malaysia, for this opportunity to encounter all those colleagues, brothers, and sisters in this lecture. I will share my screen now and start the lecture. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I hope it is clear for all. And also, if you can assure me that the sound is well heard. Yes, thank you.
The presentation has been shown very clear, and your voice is also clear.
Thank you. So I will talk about stone architecture in general, and then I will focus on Jordan because stone is the main building material historically, and now it is the main cladding material. My lecture will consist of three parts. The first part will talk about stone as, in general terms, man, nature, architecture, and history. And then the second part will focus on the natural stone in our area, which is Bilad al-Sham, or part of the Middle East, that Jordan is part of it. And the third part, maybe we can move quickly into that part because it deals with specific details and techniques. I think it is a bit different from what you have in Malaysia, I think. So I will not give it much time in order to focus on the more general parts of the lecture. Now in history, actually stone was the only record for civilizations, and man, when he started to think about expressing himself into physical material to make him express himself and put an expression for his symbols, for his beliefs, for his beliefs, and beliefs for his needs. Some of the major examples that we are of the seeing on the screen, as many theories of interpreting what was intended by constructing these kinds of constructions. Of course, it is all over the world, and stone is part of the nation would take benefit from the civilization that came before. Near to our region is the old Egyptian archaeology. It has many huge, so big and overwhelming actually. I have visited South Egypt and visited that temple. I recommend any architectural or architectural student or an architectural architect to go and permit at Saqqara. It is about 4,000 years of age. Now in Jordan, we have also magnificent examples of stone architecture. We have a World Heritage Site in South Jordan. It is Petra. Petra is a city that was carved into stone. Nabateans, who are an old Arab tribe, have made a civilization in South Jordan. and then were conquered by the Romans. They started with carving magnificent examples in reddish stone, and the word Petra, actually it is in Latini, the stone or the rock is called Petra in Latin language. And then the architecture in Petra developed to be a combination of carving and constructing into stone. So I also invite you all to come to Jordan. We have not only Petra, I will show also other examples in stone. For instance, in northern Jordan, we have Jarash. This is one city of the called Decapolis cities of Roman Empire. The Roman Empire had a kind of alliance that was called Decapolis, the 10 cities, and one of these, not only one, maybe more than half of the 10 are in Jordan, but one important is Qais. It was built with basalt stone, and we have very fine stone details in that city. We have also a very important city of Decapolis. It is Jarash. It is also in northern Jordan. What we can see now is the Oval Forum. It is the main Roman city in Jarash, and the connection, the intersection between the two major axes of the Roman city, which were called the Documanes. The other one, I missed the name. So this forum was marking the intersection of the Cardo and Documanes. An important thing actually to be told here, the knowledge into stone and the knowledge of the details of each civilization is so important for the archaeology and for the architecture and for the civilization to make us and help us reconstruct the original shape of these buildings. And this accumulative knowledge is so important for us to develop our architecture and to develop our identity of architecture through time. For instance, some Italian researchers have made some research on certain archaeological sites in Jordan. One of these is the Oval Forum. So this photo is the existing situation, and then the reconstruction, depending on the research and the details, the architectural details of the city. So they tended to make an image of what was the city, what it looked like when it was in its best. So, and another view from also Jarash, this is called the Southern Theater of Jarash. It is a semicircular theater, and this is how it looks now, and the reconstruction of it. So it is so important that we have a good knowledge of history in terms of stone architecture, for instance, and of course for other types of architecture. But for the stone, it is so important to get to know the styles and the details of each era, so we can reconstruct and we can develop an image of what the architecture looked like. Very important examples in our area also was through the Mamluk era, the Mamluk state, which is part of the Islamic history. The Mamlukis took much care in architecture and in stone architecture. They have very fine examples of architecture in Cairo and in Syria and also in Jerusalem, the capital of Palestine. And I'll show some examples. What we see in the big picture on our left hand is the Sultan Hassan Mosque in Cairo. It is one of the most important examples of Mamluki architecture, and actually I consider it to be one of the most important examples of Islamic architecture all over the world, because it has very fine example of how to plan a mosque, and it is a mosque that followed the concept of the open courtyard with 4 Iwans, and each Iwan used to teach the teachings of one of the major fiqhi disciplines, which are the Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi'i, and Hanbali. So it is so important. And we can see on the right photo the entrance of Sultan Hassan. This is a very magnificent piece of architecture. It has the Muqarnas. The Muqarnas, as you may all know, it was the 3D treatment in stone that made it very beautifully and easy for the architect, the Muslim architect, to transform the shape from a sphere or a semisphere or a dome into a rectangular shape. And these muqarnases transfer the geometry from the spherical into the rectangular in a very creative and 3D stalactite kind of treatment. This entrance has very beautiful stories. It is told in the history that this mosque was built over 7 years. It took much of the revenues of the state, and it was intended to be the tomb of Sultan Hassan, but it has never been. It was some kind of a mysterious death for the Sultan, and it was he was not buried into this mosque. And it is shown in the carvings around the entrance. The carvings, at a sudden, they disappear, and that marked the death of the mysterious death of the Sultan. And actually, I also urge everybody who can, inshallah, after the pandemic is over, and we ask God to help us into that, and things come back to its normalities. We have magnificent examples of Mamluk architecture, and very beautiful in stone detailing in Al-Quds, Jerusalem, and we express and stress that it is the capital of Palestine and not as being marketed in the media. And now we have the Dome of the Rock. All of you know it, and one of the minarets of the Haram al-Sharif, which has very nice stone details, and hopefully we can all visit Jerusalem. One fine example of the Mamluki stone architecture within the Haram al-Sharif is Qait Bay Sabil. The Sabils are constructions that used to give water for the people as kind of endowment. And we have also the Christian examples in Jerusalem, for instance. Very close to each other. I am a Jordanian architect, but originally my family comes from, we were split into two. It is a long story that we don't have now time to on a very high level of exchange of knowledge and work. So these are some of the examples around Jerusalem in Ramallah for some of the fine ends of years, and each floor you can see the development of style, the development of detailing, and that was all the time a response to the circumstances. There were rebellions, there were
I'm sorry, Pak Basa. I think the connection is somewhat slightly interrupted. So maybe you could try turn off your video so that
difficulties.
the the networks, yeah, maybe we can try going on without the video so that the sound transmission is better. I think it's still
I hope
it's still interrupted.
It is hear me and
Yeah, I can hear your voice, but it's still like glitching. Maybe we can try. I think maybe wait, maybe I'll share your PPT instead, and then you can narrate it through by voice only. What do you think? I'm gonna have to.
Yes. No problem. Sharing. No problem. No problem. Okay. No problem. Stop.
Yeah.
Stop. Stop.
No, the problem is I think even after you didn't share screen and turning off your video, your voice is still glitching, and I'm somewhat I think my voice is also glitching when it's delivered to your. What should we do?
Clearly.
Okay, I'm gonna text you. Maybe we should. I'm sorry, I cannot hear your, your words at all. It's still glitching. Yep.
We're going to fix the internet problem now. We're sorry for that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Maybe yeah. I think you can sign out and sign in again. We gladly wait for you to come back.
Yeah, all right, sure. Sorry, guys.
Thank you. Okay. Okay. Nah, ini menariknya glitch-nya masih berputar suaranya saya rasa ya, yang menarik. Padahal Pak Bashar sudah mute. Okay. Oh, and then I'm speaking Indonesian unconsciously. I'm sorry. Okay, while we wait for, yeah, I think Pak Bashar has to get out of Zoom and come back. I totally agree. Yeah, I think it's stopping now. Nope, no, it's still there. Yes, now, okay. Now, Mr. Bashar, Pak Bashar is currently trying to fix his internet connections. I think the last person who speaks already showed us that the internet connection is getting better, but there's still some glitches that repeats that somehow disrupting the voices repeatedly. Yeah, I think, I don't know, it's due to the Zoom or something. But I believe after he came back, it will get better. Now, while we wait for Pak Bashar, I wanted to remind you, if you needed any certificate, hold a sec, I'm going to send you the links. You may fill in the following form so that you can have a certificate from this event. Here you go. There you go. You can. Oh, sorry, it's not a direct link, but yeah, you can enter this in your browser, and then you can have access to our Google form so that we can make you the certificate. Now, maybe, I hope it's getting better soon. Now, as you can see, maybe let's do a little review of what Pak Bashar has presented before. Now that he has presented some of the history of the usage of stones in architectures, and he will gradually focusing on presenting stones in architectures, especially in Jordan. And I hope all the participants can ask many questions. There you go. You come back.
Is it clear now?
Yes, it's
Okay,
very
thank you.
clear now.
Okay, I will share my screen again and
Yes.
switch the video off.
All right.
Okay, so we go back. I hope you can mute your microphone, please. Now, these are some examples of the stone architecture in Ramallah town near Jerusalem, and you can see the differences between details from one level to another, depending on the prevailing circumstances and resources and the economical status, and you can read the history of the families from the facade of their homes. Actually, each another town in Jordan, it is Salt. It is a very beautiful town that has traditional Ottoman architecture using yellow limestone. It is the most well-preserved urban fabric, and it is so nice because it is set over 3 mountains that are interconnecting in a setting, a very beautiful setting. And we have some nice yellowish stone details, and some of the important buildings were adapted into museums and hotels and some restaurants, and till now it is showing very good effort in architecture, in both detailing and design. Our company has the honor to make a major urban regeneration in the downtown of Salt. The photos that we are seeing are part of that part. We have made some conservation efforts for residential complexes, and also, as we can see in some coming slides, there was an open urban plaza where all these complexes looked into. We have made an urban regeneration for that important space, and I will talk shortly about it. We have another town in northern Jordan. It is al-Jimal, the mother of camels, if you want to translate it literally. It used rough details in basalt stone, but very creative. They could, without, of course, any concrete or steel or any construction aids, they could make a span of about 5 to 6 meters with stone only, with putting boulders of stone, each one over the other in a creative way, so they could make some cantilevers and some spans resting on arches without using any other elements actually. And it is still a whole town is there and needs many renovation and conservation efforts, and actually it is so important. the modern Jordan, we can see some photos from Amman, the capital of Jordan. We still, till now, we are building with stone, but the techniques have changed drastically from the history, because now stone is not being the main structural element of the building. It is being the cladding, the facing of the architecture, but the impression and the identity of architecture is still developing, stemming from the original concept of using stone. And as you all know, because stone is part of the environment, it is mixing with the greenery, it is mixing with the topography, and it is conveying the message of the place in a very human and very creative way. So using stone gave architecture in Jordan, and specifically in Amman, a very unique impression and a very beautiful and unified kind of identity. We can see some of the fine stone buildings in Amman. These photos are from villas in old Amman, about 70 years old. As we can see, we have also details in stone and some fine details in the chiseling of the stone, and even in the selection of the color of the stone. So it is a very rich material that if you can have the good knowledge of how to deal with it, you can make very elaborate works in architecture. These are also some other examples from fine villas in Amman. And then when the reinforced concrete came into play in the 50s, the capabilities of stone were expanded, and as we can see, we could have some cantilevers, and we could have some protruding elements out of the box. And at all times, even the simplest and the modest examples of architecture, because stone is unifying the whole tissue of the urban setup, you can see a very nice and relaxing views of the architecture of Amman. And it could not have happened likewise if we didn't have the stone as the main building material that gave this unification for the urban view. Now, these are parts of the more modern parts of Amman. We also have this kind of image and architectural identity, which is also due to the use of stone. Other towns in Jordan also, Madaba is an important city in the middle of Jordan. We have also fine examples of using stone. We have Irbid in the northern of Jordan also. We have very fine examples. So anyone who is interested in stone, Jordan is an open museum to stone architecture and stone detailing. And you are all welcome to visit Jordan, inshallah, in the near future. Now, I will talk a little bit about some recent examples of dealing with stone. And after we have finished talking history, now we are talking about the contemporary stone heritage in Amman and Jordan in general. I will give some examples from other architects and then end with the works that our company has done, and I was part of the team in these projects. Now, one prominent architect in Jordan is Jafar Khan. he died about 7 years ago. He has very fine projects, and it was well known for using stone in different themes and in different colors, shapes, and textures to convey the message in each project that he has designed. One of these is the what is called Academa. It is a pharmaceutical manufacturing company, and as you can see, he brought in different textures and shapes of stone to give the message. This is the Arabic manufacturing company. It is called like this in Arabic. So he brought into some Arabic patterns, geometric patterns to give the message of the company. Other projects by architect To Clad is the Sos Village in Aqaba. He has won the Aga Khan award for this project. It was creative in using the stone of the area. In Aqaba, they have small boulders of granite, and it could not be shaped like the standard stone on the right hand. No, so they pick the boulders, and he developed to stratify the stone into 50 centimeter courses, and each 50 centimeter you have random stones in it. So it was a new way of adapting the material into the architecture of a stone, and giving a very nice look. And actually it is from the environment itself. And this is so important, that you use the resources of the site in a creative way. And so you don't waste energy, you don't waste material, and you put onto your architecture something that is well dissolving with the surrounding and matching with the colors and materials and even the environmental circumstances of the site. On our right hand, he has very beautiful villas that were designed in Amman using the local stone, but in more rectilinear and squarish patterns. This is one of his most distinguished villas, Al-Kazimi Villa in Amman, where we can see he used the rough texture stone to give the impression of that the whole design as if it was sculptured from one piece of stone. So he developed this rough texture. Of course, he has benefited from the long history and culture of stone. Actually, Jafar Khan is originally from Nablus. It is a city in North Palestine, and it is very well known for its traditions of stone. So he actually studied the tradition of stone and could develop around these origins many of the ideas that he developed in each of his projects, how to use stone creatively and how to use stone to serve the concept of the design. And you can see it is an upside down muqarnas, if you like, but it conveys the message that as if it was one piece of stone, and the detail was developed to express that idea. And this is so important when we speak about how you should understand the material and be clever and knowledgeable in the techniques that you can use in order to have the result that will serve your concept and will serve your design. Also the Al-Kadhimi villa, but from the back sides. He has also made some public projects like the City Hall in Amman. Also, as you can see, you have distinctive treatments of stone in each of these projects, and each detail would serve the concept in that project. On the right hand, we have the Dunes Club. It is a kind of sports and leisure club in outskirts of Amman, and he used the natural face of a stone. This stone comes from Ajloun, from northern Jordan, and he cuts the stone and leaves the natural face outside, so he can get this very nice color and very nice texture in contrast with the concrete elements that he is using for the beams. So as you can see, stone is very tough, but at the same time it is very flexible when it comes to the detail and when it comes to what you want to take out of it. The final project of Jafar Khan is the Jordan National Museum in Amman, and you can also see how he puts the different masses one over another, and each mass was using one kind and texture of stone, starting with the rough as the foundation, going up to the soft and more fine and lighter colors. This is a close-up on the same building. We have another prominent architect. He is Ammar Khammash. Ammar Khammash is now performing in Jordan and area, and he has some also fine examples of architecture. For instance, this is the Royal Academy of Conservation of Nature in Ajloun. It was nominated for the Aga Khan award, but did not get it in the last cycle. But actually, it has very daring details, and he is fond of cantilevers and big spans in using slim cross sections of concrete. This is the same. Actually, this is about 35 meters span on a concrete archway cladded with stone. And by the way, stone for this project was quarried from the site. The site is actually a mining, stone mining site, an old one, and he collected from the same site all these stones. If you can please mute the microphone because there is some echo. Now I will show some of the examples of our company, Bitar Consultants, and I am part of the designing team for these examples. These are villas in Amman. Each one also we used certain kind of stone and certain details and textures to express the design. On the left hand, we have Abdin Villa and Dabuq using stone from Ma'an. Ma'an is one of the important towns that produces stone in Jordan, but in different textures. On the right hand, it is a combination of Ma'ani. The whitish stone is Ma'an, and the reddish stone is the desert stone. They call it desert stone. And the design needed to mix between the pinkish and the whitish stone, so it came like this. There is another villa using the rough protruding stone, which we call tubze, with the soft chiseled stone, which we call msamsam, and the contrast between the two give the design its merit. Other kinds of stone, we have also the dark brown stones. When also we mix them with the creamy stone, it gives very nice results, like this modern massing of a twin villa. Actually, these are two villas, two attached villas, where the client wanted to give the impression of one. So we made it like this. Now we go back to the Salt downtown urban regeneration, where we have Sahat Al-Ain. Al-Ain is the spring. So there used to be an old spring in this area and an urban plaza. This is a view from the upper level. As you can see on our right hand, we have the residential complexes, and on our left hand, we have the Ayyubid Sultan Great Mosque. This mosque was in a very bad shape before the conservation and renovation, and we have recreated the facade of the mosque using the old vocabulary of Salt architecture. This is a close-up of one of the windows to create this facade and bring the whole site into an integrated space that unified the downtown of the city again. There is also in Salt City, we have the University of Balqa Applied University, and these are some faculty buildings which are modern, as you can see, but respecting the traditions of the architecture of Old Salt. These are some of the Jordan Islamic Bank complexes in Amman. And as you can see, in our designs, we try to regenerate the old traditions in a way that it does not look like copying from the past, but it conveys the message that we are a continuation to the past and to the history, but in using new techniques and using new inventions. And as you can see, this is an application of the Muqarnas in another way to transfer the geometry from the vault into the more rectangular forms. This is a commercial complex, and on the left hand we have a branch of the Jordan Islamic Bank. This is also a commercial complex in Amman. We continue to convey the message that we have to give advancement in architecture, but at the same time we have to be a clear continuation of our tradition. So this is the kind of balance between how to relate to the past and how to express the present. This is very delicate balance that each architect can express himself through his designs, using his knowledge to convey the message in order to keep the integrity between the past and present. Actually, each and every architect would have a stand from this kind of juxtaposition or the comparison between the past and the present. But what we all have to do is not to ruin our urban context, not to ruin the image of the overall city. So I urge every architect to have a deep thinking about his position from that notion. If you design ultra-modern designs and you neglect the setting and you try to express yourself, and like what we see with the star architects that would like to put his fingerprint at any place in the world. Actually, I don't see this as a good kind of contribution to the place or to the city. I think the good practice of architecture is to make the balance and to forget about your ego as an architect. You have to study the context very well and be a continuation. Of course, you don't have to copy it because you have to express the present time that you live in, but you should have a self-deniance in order not to express your individuality, but to express the collective societal values and the collective urban values into designs that reflect both the past and the present. For instance, this building was abstracting some of the details. This is an abstract for the muqarnas, how to take it from one shape to another in a very subtle way of conveying the message that we come from the Islamic, the regional architecture, but at the same time, we are in the present. We don't copy the same details, but we develop it in a modern way. These are some of the details that some 30 years ago I have drawn with my hand before the AutoCAD. This is the same building from inside. It also shows the modern interpretation of the tradition, the stones traditions, but in a modern way. This is our position from this idea. This is also a private villa in Amman using some of the developed details of stone. Another villa that used the idea of the castle and the internal courtyard using stone from Palestine and with the desert pinkish stone and with some very modern lines, but at the same time conveying the old continuation with the old and historical architecture. This is a newly constructed mosque in Amman using two kinds of stones from Palestine. The yellowish one is called Jerusalem stone, and the grayish one is Bir Zayt stone, another location in Palestine. It is on a linear site, but we tried to make some kind of recessions and masses in the facade in order to give it some kind of shadowing and depth. This is also a newly constructed hospital, private hospital building in Amman. It is an eye hospital, and the design suggested to convey the message of the curves of the eye and the eyebrow and how you can image that into a symbolic way. I have maybe 2 or 3 international examples of a stone. This is from James Sterling Stuttgart Museum. As you can see, what is important in these pictures is that how you can deal with different colors and patterns, the natural patterns of stone, by regulating them with some courses with another color. So you can absorb the contrast between the coloring of the stone by the intermediate, more brownish stone, and the result is so beautiful. So you have to study the examples of the practicing architects in order to have some ideas that will solve the problems when you face that you have a stone that is not 100% unifying, because it is a natural material. So it is not a problem actually if you can treat that well. Of course, the very famous example of falling water villa by Frank Lloyd Wright, the American architect, and how the selection of the stone layers and the stone texture is so matching with the surrounding, and actually it is extracted from the surrounding, but you can see how it is giving the what we have said about the good relation and the nice dissolving itself with the environment around. This is from another architect, Richard Meyer. Also, he has made some examples using stone and the other modern cladding, metallic cladding or aluminum cladding. And as you can see, the contrast could give very nice results. An important architect, Renzo Piano, has also made very nice details with stone. This is the Parliament building in Malta by Renzo Piano. I think maybe we have a little, about 15 minutes. I will try to go more quickly from now on, because these are so specific to Jordan, and I just want to give you a very quick idea about how we deal with the stone. Of course, the stones are generally of three origins or kinds: igneous rocks, of lava origins, and sedimentary rocks. They originate when the water come out and the minerals be there, and most of our stones are of this kind. And they metamorphic rocks when they result by changing the heat and pressure or fluid in the stone. Now, for these slides, they are talking about the origin of the stone in Jordan. In Jordan, we relate the stone from the location we extracted from. And the most important ones are the Ma'an and Ajloon from East Jordan. And then from the west, which is the Palestine, we have Hebron, my hometown, and we have Jamma'in and Qabatia from the north of Palestine. I will show some quick examples of how you can use stone with its textures and colors to enhance your design. This is the Ministry of Health in Amman, and we have used two kinds of stones with two textures to give this kind of coloring and horizontal stripes for the design. This is a lecture halls complex in Al Hashimiyya University. We have also used three colors and kinds of stone. This orange color is the local travertine stone from Jordan Valley, and the whitish stone, and with the stripes and bands of basalt stone. And this is the result. This is a hospital in Irbid using the natural face of Ajloon stone and the same stone but with chiseled treatment, and you can see how the color differs with the same kind of stone. So this is so important that when you treat the stone in a different way, you can get a very creative result of it. This is again the villa that I have shown. This is from the Islamic Bank. We used granite, Saudi granite actually, with the Jerusalem stone. It is so convenient to use stones from many resources in order to get to your idea. So it is no problem that you can use different origins of stone. And this is a hotel in Amman, which uses one kind of stone, but as you can see, because it is an elliptical shape, it is treated like marble, where you have equal pieces of stone in order to give you the shape in a regular manner. Even the basalt stone, you can use it. This is a fine example of old mosque in Amman using light white stone with the basalt layers of stone, and the result is so nice. I'll go through the mining of stone in different kinds. We have two main ways of mining. From the mining sites like this one, where you cut through the mountains or the grounds and get big boulders of stone. And the other kind is where they pick boulders from the desert, where you have boulders of stone that are scattered, and you pick them and you cut them. Of course, for the manufacturing of stone, very quickly also, when you get the boulders, you cut into these boulders on different sizes of saws, from the bigger to the smaller to the even smaller one, in order to get to the course, to the height of the course of stone that you need. So you cut from big to smaller in order to get at the end to the size that you have in the design. Of course, in the beginning, they would polish the stone. Either we can use it polished, or we chisel the face of the stone. In the old days, these kinds of tools were used. Until now, some use the chiseling tools. And at nowadays, now machinery is taking place of the manual chiseling of stone. And if the technician is well trained, the result would be very nice. These are also some of the tools. For the protruding, or we call it tubze, which is the stone that has a protruding part of it, it should be by manual tools actually, in order to shape it and have this end result. I will show some of the textures just quickly. This is the chiseling, we call it musamsam, which is fine. This is the bush hammered, which is very fine, using what we call the matabbe. This is the rough textured, using one-headed chisel. This is the we call it the brushed stone. Some kinds of stone, when you have some veins, the brush can give very nice results, like this one. This is Jerusalem stone when you brush it. So the veins are being engraved, and the other surface will be very nice, soft, but it has this kind of texture. We have certain names for stones. We have very nice tradition of stones actually. So this should be taught in the sites, and it doesn't. It cannot be fully taught in the universities. You have to go to the workers and listen to them and live with them in order to know all the namings of stone. This is the running stone, which is the normal shape. The angle stone, it has also certain name. The three-faced stone, it has dustur, we call it dustur. When it is, when the angle is more than 90 degrees, we call it roch, also another Arabic name. The small angle, kalb, the larger angle, araqa. The cornices, the square stone for the columns, the overhead stone when you put it on the windows. For the arches, you have also certain naming, the keystone, the soffit of the arch, the face of the arch, of course the carved capitals or bases, or the body of the stone. Now I will go more quickly because I know that we are running out of time. In the old tradition, the stone was a bearing material, like this one. Even now, it could be used as bearing material, but actually the most use of the stone now is just a facing material. We have in Jordan the technical specifications, the general technical specifications. They indicate the proportions and the thicknesses and the strengths of the stone. We don't have to go through all of these, but we have specifications actually for the stone. We have the specific weight, the water absorbance. We have limits for all these things, the rupture standards, the abrasion, all kinds of tests are being made to stone to grade the stone from the good to the bad ones. And even for the cladding systems, we have the traditional cladding system, which we build the stones and then pour concrete behind. I will not go through all the details because they are so specific to Jordan. And we have the better way of building. The traditional way is to build the stone and put the form, the wood form behind it, and then pour concrete, and then put the thermal insulation behind, and build a protection wall from inside. This is the standard traditional way. But also we have the cladding, the cladding of stone. When we have system for the cladding, we sometimes it is called dry fix or rain screen cladding, like this one, where you have a subframe attached to the structural wall, and then you clad over it. And we have the more common way of cladding using clamps and anchors, stainless steel clamps and anchors that you calculate structurally to hold the stones and attach them to the wall of the building. Of course, you have to take care of the water insulation and the thermal insulation within the gap between the stone and the wall. These are some of the details, how to clad stone and how first you put the thermal insulation, and when you cut through the thermal insulation, you have to treat this in order not to make thermal bridges. These are some of the construction photos, how to clad stone over. This is the simplest cladding of a stone using wet cladding, what we call it wet cladding, where we construct the concrete wall, then we put steel mesh and we connect these pieces of stone with the clamps to the mesh, and we pour concrete behind. So this is called wet. Of course, when we design, we take care of the sizes and the dimensions of stone from the very beginning. When we design our facades, we take care that the courses of stone would match into the dimension and from floor to floor, in order to make the relation between the windows and the floors constant over the different floors. Of course, this is related to each project and the cross section and the levels of each of the buildings, and it is not necessary to have the same course height for the whole building. It depends on the design. When you have certain design, you can play with the height of the courses according to your preference and your design. These are some of the modern detailing in stone. Of course, stone, as I said, is not being structurally bearing material anymore. It is now the cladding material. So we now depend on the reinforced concrete cross sections and attach stone to the concrete. The pointing of the stone at the end is also a technique related to the stone, where you put grout within in the joints of the stone, and how to treat that joint. It has different kinds of treatments. When we do it into our tenders, when we make our bills of quantities, we should describe in very detail how we treat this item, from where you could get the stone, what is the treatment that you want, how you calculate the quantity, and how you put the price, and what kinds of tests that you have to do, and how is the specific way of cladding or traditionally building of a stone, and all sorts of things has to be described in very elaborate details, in order not to get into misunderstanding between the engineer and the contractor. These are some of the international photos of how creative could the use of stone be. So the imagination is the limit of where you can go with stone. And thank you so much, and so sorry if I took more than it was intended for the lecture. Thank you, and I'm ready for discussion.
Okay, thank you so much for the presentation. I think it's wonderful. It's okay if you pass the time, because the presentation is very wonderful and very insightful. I think so many people wanted to hear, because I think there are lots of difference in terms of architecture techniques and perspective due to the difference of material usage between Jordan and Indonesia. Um, but now we can get into the discussion session. But before I begin, I read some of the questions. I forgot to mention earlier that Bapak Nashar is unfortunately unable to give his presentation today due to his health situations. Therefore, unfortunately, he cannot be here today with us. So I wish that all the participants could wish him well and have a speedy recovery. Now,
Yes,
yes, it's such unfortunate, but it's okay. We have Pak Barshahid with us today. Now we can have our discussions. There are several questions that already entered the chat sections. I'm gonna read the first questions. Oh yeah, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. You can raise your hands or type it in the chat sections, and I'll read it. But if you are hesitating to ask because you wanted to ask in Bahasa Indonesia, that's okay. You can type it in Bahasa. You can say it in Bahasa, and I will translate it for you. Now, for the first question is, we have questions from wait a minute, from Damar Jelang, I think. I think I'll go from Damar Jelang, and then I go to the people who raise his hand, and then back and forth to the chat and the raise hand people. Now, there are two questions from Damar Jelang. The first is there any kind of stone except the yellow limestones that being used in Jordan building? I think the first question is already answered, because you have later on then you explain about several stones that being used in Jordan, so we can skip this one. But the second question is there special techniques for processing the stone apart from the chisel techniques?
please, if you can say it again.
Okay, so the question is there a special techniques for processing the stone apart from the chisel techniques? Because you did mention earlier that you did process the stones using chisel techniques, but is there
Yes,
any other techniques or any other follow-up techniques after the chisel one?
yes, okay. Actually, yes, there are. The traditional technique is the chiseling, but there are now modern techniques. One of them was the brushing that I have mentioned, and there are the other techniques such as burning. Sometimes they burn the face of the stone and put water on it in order to make some small explosive texture in the face. There's another technique using chemicals. Some kinds of acids also will take from the face of the stone and give sometimes coloring to the stone. It depends on the kind of stone and the chemical composition of the stone. So there are many new techniques that are also being introduced to stone. And actually, this is an area where research and development is open, because any researcher could make experimentation and trials in order to develop new techniques for treating the face of the stone. Yes.
Okay, so there are already several other techniques apart from chisel techniques and that depends on the way that you wanted to shapes and resulting on the stones, right? It's
Yes.
fascinating. Now, moving on to the next questioners, and we have Muhammad Audi Hoiron who raises his hand. Now, if you wanted to ask the questions, please go ahead, deliver your questions.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, I
Yes.
can hear you.
Okay. First of all, thank you for the presentation. It's really, really interesting because we are in Indonesia here. Actually, never experienced this kind of masonry architecture. Okay, so the question is, are there differences between like stone masonry and brick masonry? Because as far as I know, these two are like the main way of construction method in a dry tropical area. Like, are they go hand in hand? Like in the Al Hassan Mosque in Cairo, I think, like what you showed before. I
Mhm.
think it shows that in the outside they're using stone, but in the inside they're using bricks. So like I just kind of want to know whether the two go hand in hand or they have different purposes, or probably like in Indonesia they are meant for different type of buildings. Like in Indonesia, we are using bricks and stone for important buildings such as temple and palace, and we are using timber and wood for like normal what's it people's house and things. So basically that the question is, are there differences between bricks and masonry in terms of when will they be used? When will they be used?
Yes.
And are they have something to do with social classes and I don't know, history or like cultural things? Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Muhammad, for this question. Actually, there are some similarities between the stone masonry and brick masonry. Similarities in the technique, but actually it is so different from the point of durability point of view. The stone is much more durable. The stone is much more resisting to weather conditions and water and so forth. Stone uh, is stronger actually. So even in the historical eras, the stone wall should be less thick than a brick wall if you want to treat it like a bearing element. Actually, in the modern times now in Jordan, for instance, we use stone for the outer facing of the walls, and bricks, we would use them from inside and we plaster them with cement plaster. But actually, the structural element is the concrete, the reinforced concrete wall in the middle, which you can't see at the end. In the old days, like Sultan Hassan Mosque, I do not believe that they have used bricks at all. They used stone from the two sides, from outside and inside, and some stone boulders in the middle with joint fillers and mortars to keep everything together. But the bricks actually were not used in the stone architecture of the Mamluki era, as far as I know. Some of the locations where there is no stone in the nearby, they would use bricks, sometimes the baked bricks or the sun-dried bricks, such as in Iraq, for instance. Most of the Iraqi old architecture and traditional architecture are of bricks. And they would make the wall very thick in order to bear the weights, the structural weights of the building. But in other areas like Jordan and Bilad Sham, and also for Egypt for the important buildings only, because it is not so available, they would use stone. But for the ordinary buildings, for the housing buildings, most of them went in bricks. But in Jordan, Palestine, Syria, and Lebanon, because the stones are very much available, most of the buildings, even the modest ones, were in stone. But now, at nowadays, we use bricks for the inside and stone for the outside. So it goes parallel, but the stone has the prestige and the strength at all times. Thank you.
Okay, so I hope it answered your questions, yeah. Audi Khairan, Muhammad Audi Khairan.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Shukran. Barakallahu fiik.
Thank you. Barakallah.
Now, the next questioner is from Johyanti. Oh yeah, I'm sorry, Pak Bashar. If you don't mind, I'm going to stop the sharing because I think we can just talk without the PDF, and I think it's okay if you turn on your video right now because we were not screening the presentation
Yes.
anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Now I'm going to. It's okay. Now I'm going to read the next questioner's questions, and it's from Jofyanti Maya. She asked, excuse me, I want to ask, is the technique that used for setting the stone on the constructions is already responded for the shock of the earthquake? Now, maybe before you answer this question, there's a question before that. Is there any earthquake in Jordan?
Yes, actually, Jordan is considered one of the countries that have some earthquakes, but not in every part of it. Actually, in the Jordan Valley, we have more active earthquake area, more than in Amman and the other cities. But we design for earthquakes actually, and this is a requirement for the structural designers to take care of. They design the concrete structures to take into consideration the earthquake design, and they introduce joints in the big buildings, and they calculate it to give the right dimension for it. Actually, we relate to that. So the structural engineers, they would make this calculation, and we will respect any joint of the structural design. We reflect it into the stone. So if we have a joint, we should keep it in the stone and treat it with some kind of a cover or some materials that fill that gap, but we should keep it. And this is how we keep our stones safe and not developing any cracks, because we respect that. But we don't do more than this. So we follow the design of the structural engineers according to their calculations of the earthquake, depending on the area, because we have zones, zone A, zone B, and zone C. And these zones, each one has parameters that they follow, and they recommend if we make a joint, we will follow that, yes.
Okay, so it's already the structural design is already considering earthquake as well in some areas.
Yes, yes. Actually, they should make their calculation in each of the areas, but in some areas it is so severe, so you may reach to 10 centimeter gap. But in the normal cases, it will be about 2 to 3 centimeters for the big buildings. But for smaller buildings, the housing buildings, we don't have to introduce joints. But the structural design itself, they take it into consideration. They put some stiffening elements so as the building would act in the shaking status in a way that will not introduce cracks or even collapse. And now the structural softwares, as you all know, they have this capability of modeling the strength of the earthquake. So you put your design into the software and you apply the earthquake by the strength that is indicated in the codes. And it shows that you have done a good design or you have some problems and you can elaborate on them.
Modify it.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Now, I think we can go to the next questioners, and we have people who raised a hand over here. And Farel Ghazian would like to ask a question directly. Please,
yes.
If you want to ask questions.
Good afternoon, sir. Yeah, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Yeah. So I want to ask one question, and as we know, there is so many construction stone in Middle East was made from the dried mud stone. And my question is, what is the advantage when we use dried mud stone in Middle East as the building construction? Jazakumullah khair, sir.
Do you need him to repeat the question?
Just the end. I hear that he is asking about the dried mud bricks, but what is the question?
Yeah, can you repeat it again, Farel?
Testing.
I also kind of missed the question.
Testing.
Yeah, we can
you
hear
hear me?
clearly. Yes.
Okay. So the question is, what is the advantage when we use dried mudstone in Middle East as the building construction? Yeah, because
what is the what?
The advantage.
The benefit of using dried mud stone in the
Yes. Now the dried mud, we call it dried mud bricks, not stones, because we use the earth itself. In that, in some areas where the stones are not available, we use the earth itself, and sometimes they add to it straw or other materials, some of the manure of animals, and each area they have their own technique in order to make the right mix and then put it into a mold and leave it to dry in the sun and then build with it. This is a technique where stone is not available. Of course, this is so cheap and so environmental because you are using the material that is around you and you are not wasting energy and you are not wasting efforts and money. It is very good for the thermal insulation, but there is a disadvantage of the dyed mud bricks is that it weathers with the rain, it weathers with the weather conditions quickly. So each year you have to make maintenance for the houses and especially for the roofing because they use, for instance, tree trunks and smaller branches, and then they pour also mud on the roof. But at all times you have to keep this in a good shape after each rainy season, the mud would wither away and you have to make your maintenance in order to make it good again. So it is a very environmentally aware technique, and it is so suitable for areas that you don't have stone or other stronger materials to build with. But you have to follow the technique, and you have to make more frequent maintenance in comparison to stone. Stone, when you build in stone, you have to do very little maintenance over the years, because stone is a very robust material, and it does not weather easily. It could live for thousands of years, in contrast with the dried mud bricks.
Okay. Has your question been answered clearly?
Yeah, it's for, I understand.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Jazakumullah khair.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay. Now the next question is, we have Fatimatu Zahra raising her hand. If you want to ask question, you may unmute yourself now.
Okay, can you hear me, Miss Adiba?
Yes,
Okay.
your voice is very clear.
Okay. First of all, thank you for the presentation, Mr. Basar. And I think it's so intriguing to see the differences of Jordan traditional architecture with Indonesian architecture. And if in Indonesia, there's some problem based on sustainability of wood in architecture, because if you know, in Indonesia, the traditional architecture use mainly wood as the construction. But is it any problem, the same kind of problem in Jordan about the sustainability of the material, the stone material, or is it any concern about the future lack of stone or material in Jordan? That's my question. I hope it's clear.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Fatima Zahra. It's a very important question, actually, because I continue to say that it is so environmental to use the material that is around you. But actually, I missed to warn that it should also be so important to take care not to overmine and not to ruin the natural site. When you are doing mining, for instance, you have to do an environmental impact study, and then you have to mine to an extent that you do not make harm to the natural environment. So at a certain point you have to stop. And of course, the mining sites should not be within urban areas, because you know it will drastically change the geographic and the topographic nature of the sites. So it should be in remote areas, and it should not go without limits. So a clear study has to be done. So the limits of mining and the locations of mining has to be drawn based on a good study. Also, we don't recommend at all to mine where the forests are, where you should cut the trees, or you should make any harm to the terrain. This is a very important question. Many of our sites, as I mentioned, are in the desert, so you don't have to cut mountains. They just take off a strata of the earth and collect the boulders from there, and there are vast areas with that regard. And then at the same time, stone is a recyclable material, actually, because some of the old buildings, when you take them out for any reason, for structural failure, or for you want to make another development on the land, you can take out the stone and use it again. So this is also a good advantage of using a stone. The stone, when you at the end of the life cycle of a building, you can use it again, and you don't get rid of it. No, you can use it again, and even you can treat it if you like, but you can at all times you can use it. And this is a common practice in Jordan. Whenever an old building that is not important and the owner wants to take it out and does not have any historical significance, he could apply to the municipality, and if they approve that this building is not so important and it does not have a distinctive value, they allow him to take it out, and he would take out the stones first and put them aside, and then demolish the building, and the stones can be used again in other places. So thank you for this question, Fatima.
Yeah, I hope that answers your questions, Fatima.
Yes, it's already answered my question. Thank you, Mr.
You're welcome.
Now we moving on to the next questioners. We have Anissa Izzati Firdaus who wanted to ask the question directly. You may unmute your mic, Iza.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. I'm sorry, but you can hear me, right? Because
Yes.
it's kind
your
of.
voice is
Oh
very
yes.
clear.
Okay. So thank you for your presentation, sir. It's really interesting to learn about stone, especially in the other country. What I want to ask is kind of connected with the last question. Like, is there any like inventions or like research to like mixing or maybe like mixing the stone or like to like decrease the use of the stones so it wouldn't be overmined, like a research or some like an act to decrease the use by like having some inventions, like new invention, like in Indonesian, like we really lack of wood, so some of us like trying to like replicate the woods or maybe mixing the woods with another like timber or what, so it wouldn't it would decrease the use of the woods. That's my questions. Thank you. I hope it's clear because
Yes,
I kind
yes.
of
It is clear, and thank you for that question also. Actually, I have not mentioned, and maybe I should mention it in the future, that there are some manufactured stones which are composed stones from natural materials, grinded, and then they put some kinds of resins, and the research on that area is advancing very much. And the aim of it actually is, as you have mentioned, Anissa, not to get into overmining of stone. The results of the replica stone are being good at certain occasions, actually. Not all the time. Some of them, when the material is, for instance, they have some porous material, it would get dirt into the manufactured stone, and sometimes the results are not so good. But we started to see some of the materials that are reaching very near to the natural stones. Of course, the look is not so nice like the natural stone. You know, the natural stone, because it is a natural material, and this is not so easy in the manufactured stones. But I think there is much area for the research to go into that direction. And now we are experiencing some of the good taste cheap, and I expect that it will advance very much because it will be cheaper and help not to overmine stones. Personally, I did not use this kind of stone till now, and I think the analogy that you have made with the wood is very accurate and appreciated, because wood is a sensitive material, of course, and we don't want forests to be wiped out. So the replicas are being so important in that regard.
Okay, I hope that answers your questions, Isa.
Oh, yes, it answered my questions. Thank you so much. Yes.
Okay. Now we have, I think, the chat sections from Al Mahmuda. She asked that she just Googled Jordan, most likely micro plants on the buildings.
Clear.
Oh yeah. Okay. Okay.
Okay. Sometimes. Okay. 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 Mold will build up, and we have to clean it with certain procedures and materials. And this is also logical buildings when the mold builds up due to hundreds of years of contamination. But for good stones, it is not a problem.
Okay, so if the stone is standard that used for building, then it shouldn't be a problem. my is my voice is clear, Pak Bashar?
It is
Okay. But due to the limitation of time, unfortunately, we have to end the discussion session. I'm going to say some sort of oh, sorry. Okay, I'm gonna repeat first to Pak Bashar. Questions. Now I will give the closing statement. Okay. Okay, now I will continue giving
I hear
the
you well
closing
now.
statement.
I hear you well
Oh,
now.
okay. All right. I'm sorry, Pak Bashar. This is, I think it's just, internet problems. But thankfully, we made it to the last minute.
Yes.
Now, unfortunately, again, due to the limitation of time, we have to end the event for today. Now I'm going to give some sort of, a little bit conclusion and closing statements. But there's so many things that I learned today from Babasan and from also the discussion sessions. Then of course I cannot put that into a small summary, short summary. But there are several remarks that I'd like to say about what we had today. Is that apparently stone has provided us a huge impact in architecture developments all over the world, especially in Jordan, and many techniques have been developed during the use of stone in architecture. For example, before there were only chiseling, now the techniques already varied to so many ways, chemicals and other techniques that architects could use any kind of techniques that they can have to expect for their buildings. And not only the development of stone processing, the development of architecture also developed in terms of structural matter, creating more fascinating designs in Jordan and perhaps Amman specifically. And now the use of stone has also shaped the image of Jordan with unity, that making Jordan perhaps we can say as the face of stone country, stone architectural country. Now, I'd like to say thank you very much, Pak Bashar, for your willingness to be here today and giving us so very insightful presentations and informations. And I hope all of our students and participants could learn many things from our sessions today. And now, before we officially close the event, I'd like to ask the participants to turn on their camera to have a photo sessions that will be captured by our host today. Now, I will wait for salah. Wait for the participant to turn on their videos. Okay. Salah. Okay. Wait a bit. Okay. Should I remove the spotlight? I'm gonna remove the spotlight first.
Okay, is everyone ready?
Okay. Smile.
1, 2, 3. The first page and then the second page. Okay, 1, 2, 3. The third page. 1, 2, 3. And the fourth page. And the last page. Okay, Bu Adiba.
Okay, thank you so much, Bu Ami. Now, once again, I'd like to say thank you very, very much for Pak Bashar for being here with us today, and I hope that there will be more other collaborations with us in the future.
Thank you so much, Bu Adiba and Bu Ami, for your kind and warm welcoming me, and I am so happy to get in touch with this great group of architects, and I'm ready for future collaboration. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. And also, I want to say thank you to all the participants that are already here with us and have a great discussion with us this afternoon. And I hope you guys would wait for the next guest lecture that we're going to hold soon in the future. Now, good afternoon, thank you, and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikum salam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.